Captain Jake Morrison sat in his command chair aboard the Frontier Dawn, watching the stars drift past on the view screen. It was supposed to be a simple mission: map some trade routes, check a few systems, and head back home. Nothing exciting, nothing dangerous. Just the kind of routine work that kept humanity's small fleet busy on the edges of known space. "Captain, we're picking up a transmission," Kate Palmer said from the navigation station. Her fingers moved across her console, bringing up the signal data. "It's coming from inside Zetharian space." Jake straightened in his chair. The Zetharians were one of the big powers in the galaxy. They controlled hundreds of worlds and had technology that made human ships look like toys. Most importantly, they didn't usually talk to humans unless there was a problem. "Put it through," Jake said. The view screen changed from stars to an alien face. The Zetharian looked like an insect made of crystal and metal. Compound eyes reflected the light in strange patterns. Mandibles moved with precise clicks as it spoke. "Human vessel Frontier Dawn. You will proceed immediately to Zethara Prime. Captain Jake Morrison will present himself to Queen Valara. This is not a request. Confirm receipt of this message." The transmission ended before Jake could respond. "Well, that's not concerning at all," Ben Clark muttered from the engineering station. The young engineer looked worried. "Boss, the Zetharians don't just summon random human captains. This has to be some kind of mistake. Check the transmission again," Jake ordered Kate. "Make sure they actually meant us." Kate worked her console for a minute, then shook her head. "No mistake. They specifically named you Captain. They even included our ship registration codes." Lisa Grant, the medical officer, leaned against the doorway to the bridge. "Any idea what they want?" "None," Jake admitted. He pulled up everything he knew about the Zetharian Empire on his personal screen. It wasn't much. The Zetharians kept to themselves mostly. They traded with other species but didn't share much about their culture or government. Queen Valara had ruled for 70 years by human counting. She was supposed to be brilliant and dangerous in equal measure. "We could run," Ben suggested, though his tone said he knew it was a bad idea, "and start a war between humanity and one of the most powerful empires in the galaxy." Jake shook his head. "No, we go. But everyone stays alert. If this goes bad, you get the ship out and warn Earth." A massive Zetharian warship appeared 3 hours later. It was 10 times the size of the Frontier Dawn. Bristling with weapons that could turn their small vessel into dust, the warship didn't threaten them or even communicate much. It just took position behind them and made it clear they were to follow. The journey to Zethara Prime took 2 days. Jake spent most of that time trying to learn everything he could about Zetharian culture. Kate helped, pulling up every file in their database. They learned that Zetharians valued order and efficiency above everything else. They had eliminated crime, poverty, and waste from their society through careful planning and genetic engineering. They were the perfect civilization, at least by their own standards. "Here's something interesting," Kate said on the second day. "About 200 years ago, the Zetharians went through something they call the Great Modification. They changed their own genetics to make themselves more logical, more efficient. They removed what they called unnecessary emotional responses." "They removed emotions?" Lisa asked, horrified. "That's insane." "Not all emotions," Kate clarified. "They still feel things like loyalty and duty. But they got rid of what they considered wasteful feelings. Things like joy, humor, spontaneous pleasure. They saw those as inefficient." Jake stared at the report on his screen. A species that had deliberately cut out the ability to feel happy. He couldn't imagine it. Why would they do that? "The reports say it made them more productive," Kate said. "More focused. They built their empire after the modification. Every Zetharian is born now without those emotional capabilities. It's been that way for generations." Zethara Prime appeared ahead of them, a planet covered in geometric cities that looked more like circuit boards than places where living beings existed. Everything was organized, planned. Perfect. The Frontier Dawn was guided to a landing platform in the capital city. Armed Zetharian guards waited for them. Jake met his crew in the airlock. "Remember, we're guests here. Be polite, be careful, and don't touch anything." The guards separated them immediately. Two of them took Jake by the arms, not roughly but firmly, making it clear he had no choice. The others stayed with Kate, Ben, and Lisa. "Wait, where are you taking him?" Kate demanded. "The captain will meet Queen Valara," one guard said. Its voice was flat, emotionless. "You will remain with your vessel. You will not be harmed if you comply." Jake nodded to his crew. "It's okay, do what they say." The guards led him through the city. Everything was clean, organized, and utterly alien. Buildings rose in perfect geometric patterns. Citizens moved with purpose, never hurrying, never stopping to chat. There was no litter, no graffiti, no signs of the chaos that marked human cities. It was beautiful in a cold, unsettling way. The royal palace dominated the city center. It was a massive structure that seemed to grow from the ground itself, all crystal and metal reaching toward the sky. Guards were everywhere, standing at precise intervals, watching everything with their compound eyes. They took Jake to a small room and left him there. He waited for hours. It was clearly meant to make him nervous. And it worked. He paced the room, sat down, stood up again, and tried not to imagine all the ways this could go wrong. Finally, the doors opened. Different guards led him through corridors decorated with art that followed mathematical patterns. Everything was precise, calculated, beautiful, but cold. They brought him to an enormous throne room. Queen Valara sat on a throne at the far end of the massive chamber. She was huge, maybe 9 feet tall, with crystalline wings that caught the light and threw rainbow patterns across the floor. Her carapace was decorated with medals that marked her rank. Dozens of other Zetharians stood around the room, all watching him with their alien eyes. Jake walked forward. He had no idea what protocol to follow, so he simply stopped at what felt like a respectful distance and waited. The queen studied him in silence. Her compound eyes seemed to take in every detail. The chamber was completely quiet. Jake could hear his own heartbeat. "Captain Jake Morrison," the queen finally said. Her voice was strange, coming from an alien throat, but the translation device in his ear made the words clear. "You have been brought here for a specific purpose. I have a task for you." "Your Majesty," Jake said, trying to keep his voice steady. "I'm honored. What do you need?" The queen stood. Even the other Zetharians in the room seemed to tense at the movement. She stepped down from her throne and moved closer to Jake. Up close, she was even more imposing. She could have killed him with one strike of her clawed hands. "I have studied your species extensively," Queen Valara said. "Humanity possesses something my people have lost. I require you to teach me this skill. You will remain on Zethara Prime until you succeed. Failure is not acceptable. Do you understand?" "I'll do my best, Your Majesty," Jake said. "What skill do you need me to teach you?" The queen's mandibles moved in what might have been hesitation. Around the room, her advisors and guards watched silently. The moment stretched out, tense and strange. "I wish to learn how to laugh," Queen Valara said. Jake's mind went blank. Of all the things he had imagined, all the possible reasons for being summoned across the galaxy by an alien queen, this had never even occurred to him. He stood there, speechless, staring at the most powerful being in 300 star systems, unable to process what he had just heard. The queen waited for his response. The entire court waited. And Jake Morrison, captain of a small human survey ship, had absolutely no idea what to say. The guards escorted Jake to a set of rooms in the palace. They were comfortable enough, with furniture adjusted to human proportions, but he barely noticed. His mind was still trying to process what had just happened. An alien queen had summoned him across the galaxy to teach her how to laugh. It sounded like the setup to a bad joke, except no one was laughing. He managed to contact his crew after an hour of trying to figure out the communication system. Kate's face appeared on the screen, relief obvious in her expression. "Captain, Are you okay? They wouldn't tell us anything. I'm fine, Jake said. He looked around the room, wondering if anyone was listening. Probably. The Queen wants me to stay here for a while. You three stay with the ship. Don't cause any trouble. What does she want? Ben asked, crowding into view behind Kate. Jake hesitated. If he said it out loud, it would sound even more ridiculous. She wants me to teach her something about human culture. I'll explain later. Right now, I need you to dig up everything you can about Zetharian emotional history. Kate, you mentioned something about a genetic modification? Already on it, Kate said. I'll send you what I find. The next morning, Jake was brought to a different room in the palace. It was smaller than the throne room but still huge by human standards. Queen Valara was already there, alone except for 2 guards by the door. She gestured for Jake to sit on a low bench. We will begin, she said simply. Jake sat down and tried to organize his thoughts. Your Majesty, before we start, can I ask why you want to learn this? Laughter. The Queen was quiet for a moment. When she spoke, her voice was different from the throne room. Less formal, more thoughtful. I have watched thousands of hours of human communications and entertainment. I have studied your species since first contact. There is something in the way humans interact that my people lack. When humans laugh together, they form bonds. They become more creative. They take risks that logic alone would not suggest. I believe this is why your species, though young and small, has already begun to surprise the galaxy. But your people are so successful, Jake said. You have 300 worlds. Advanced technology. You've eliminated poverty and crime. We have become efficient, Valara agreed. But we have also become stagnant. Our art follows formulas. Our science advances slowly. Our people are content, but not passionate. I found old records from before the Great Modification. My ancestors had something we lost when we engineered away what we called unnecessary emotions. I believe laughter is the key to understanding what we gave up. Jake nodded slowly. He was starting to see this wasn't just a strange whim. The Queen was trying to help her entire species. Okay. I'll try my best. But I need you to understand something. Laughter isn't really something you can teach like math or history. It's a response. It happens when something is funny, or surprising, or absurd. Then teach me what is funny, Valara said. That turned out to be much harder than Jake expected. He spent hours trying to explain humor. The physical act of laughing was simple enough to describe, but making someone understand why something was funny felt impossible. He tried telling jokes, but they didn't translate. Zetharian language was precise and literal. Wordplay didn't work. Puns made no sense. Okay, try this one, Jake said after the third failed attempt. Why did the human bring a ladder to the bar? Valara tilted her head. I do not know. Was there a structural need to access something elevated? No, because they heard the drinks were on the house. Silence. The Queen's mandibles moved slightly, but not in any way that suggested amusement. I do not understand. Drinks at a bar are never physically on the structure itself. Jake rubbed his face. It's a play on words. On the house means free, but it can also literally mean on top of the building. The humor comes from the double meaning. This seems inefficient, Valara said. Why not simply say the drinks are free? They tried for 3 days. Jake showed her human comedy shows, but she watched them with confusion. He tried physical comedy, but she saw only dangerous situations that should have been avoided. He explained sarcasm, irony, and absurdist humor. She understood them intellectually but felt nothing. On the 4th day, Jake took a different approach. Instead of trying to make her laugh, he asked about her life. Tell me about yourself, he said. Not as a queen, just as a person. Valara seemed surprised by the question. What do you wish to know? Anything. What was it like growing up? Do you have family? What do you do when you're not running an empire? She was quiet for a long time. Jake wondered if he had offended her somehow. Then she began to speak. I was selected as heir when I was young. My genetic markers showed optimal leadership traits. I was raised in the palace, educated by the best minds in the empire. I learned strategy, economics, history, and warfare. I have ruled for 70 cycles. I have expanded our borders, maintained peace, ensured prosperity for billions. That's impressive, Jake said. But it sounds lonely. Lonely is an emotional state I was not designed to feel, Valara said. But something in her tone made Jake think that wasn't quite true. Do you have friends? He asked. Another long pause. Zetharians do not have friends as humans understand them. We have colleagues, subordinates, and allies. We work together efficiently. But do you ever just talk to someone? Not about work or duty, just to talk? No, Valara said. That would be inefficient. Jake felt a deep sadness for her. She ruled hundreds of worlds but had never had a simple conversation with someone who wasn't looking for orders or advantage. That's what you're missing. Laughter doesn't come from jokes or comedy shows. It comes from connection. From sharing moments with people who care about you. I do not understand. Let me show you, Jake said. He called Kate on his communicator. Can you come to the palace? Bring Ben and Lisa too. An hour later, his crew arrived. The guards weren't happy about it, but Valara allowed it. Jake had them set up a simple meal in his quarters, human food from the ship's supplies. Nothing fancy. Just the kind of simple dinner friends might share. Valara arrived with only 2 guards. She looked out of place in the casual setting. A towering alien queen, watching 3 humans prepare food and set a table. Sit with us, Jake said. If you can, I mean. Is that okay? She settled onto a reinforced chair, her crystalline wings folding carefully behind her. This is highly irregular. Good, Jake said. Irregular is where laughter lives. They ate, and the crew told stories. Kate talked about her childhood on Earth, growing up near the ocean. Ben described his first day at the engineering academy, when he accidentally set off the fire suppression system during a simple maintenance drill. Lisa shared a story about trying to treat a patient who turned out to be allergic to every common painkiller, forcing her to get creative with alternatives. As they talked, they interrupted each other, teased each other gently, laughed at their own mistakes. It was natural, comfortable, the kind of interaction that humans took for granted. Valara watched everything. Her compound eyes tracked every gesture, every expression. She didn't speak much, but she was clearly fascinated. Then something unexpected happened. One of the guards, a younger Zetharian named Crix, shifted his weight and accidentally knocked his weapon against the wall with a loud crash. Everyone jumped. There was a moment of tension. Kate broke it. Nice going. You train for years to be an elite guard, and then you trip over your own gun? Ben laughed. I did that during my first security inspection. Dropped my toolkit right in front of the Admiral. Thought I was going to get thrown out of the program. The tension dissolved. Crix's posture changed, becoming less rigid. He made a sound, something between a click and a chirp. Jake realized with surprise that it might have been the Zetharian equivalent of embarrassment. Valara's attention was completely focused on the interaction. She leaned forward slightly. You made errors. But instead of shame or punishment, you shared these experiences? And the others found this amusing? That's the point, Jake said. We're not perfect. Nobody is. When we can laugh about our mistakes together, it makes them easier to handle. It reminds us we're all human. Or, whatever species we are. For the first time, something changed in Valara's posture. Her mandibles moved in a new pattern. Her wings shifted slightly. It wasn't laughter, but it was something. Recognition. Maybe, understanding. Show me more, she said. They talked for hours after that. Not about empires or duty or efficiency. Just about life. The strange, messy, ridiculous nature of existence. And Queen Valara listened to every word. Jake became a strange fixture in the royal palace over the following weeks. Courtiers watched him with obvious confusion as he walked the corridors. Whispers followed him everywhere. Though he couldn't understand what the Zetharians were saying in their own language, some looked at him with what might have been curiosity, others seemed hostile. His crew visited regularly now. Valara had given permission for them to come and go freely, though always under guard escort. They brought supplies, news from the ship, and most importantly, their human presence. The Queen wanted to understand laughter, and Jake had convinced her that meant understanding how humans naturally interacted. The palace staff keeps staring at us, Lisa mentioned during one visit. She was helping Jake prepare another casual dinner in his quarters. It's like they've never seen people just hanging out before. They probably haven't, Kate said. She was sitting on the floor, her back against the wall, reading through reports on her datapad. Everything here is so formal and structured. The idea of people just existing together without a specific purpose probably seems bizarre to them. Ben was trying to fix one of Jake's chairs, which had broken under his weight the day before. I still can't believe we're teaching an alien queen how to laugh. This is the weirdest assignment in human history. It's not just about laughter anymore, Jake said. The more I talk to her, the more I realize she's trying to figure out what her people lost. They engineered themselves into perfection, but they gave up something important along the way. A knock at the door announced Valara's arrival. She had started coming to these gatherings regularly, always with just Crix and one other guard. She seemed more relaxed than she did in the formal throne room, though she still carried herself with obvious authority. Your Majesty, Jake greeted her. We were just about to start. Are you hungry? Zetharians do not experience hunger the way humans do, Valara said. But she settled into her usual spot anyway. We eat for efficiency, not pleasure. Maybe that's something else we should work on, Lisa suggested with a smile. They shared the meal, talking about nothing important. Kate told a story about her sister's wedding disaster, where everything that could go wrong did go wrong. But it somehow ended up being the most memorable wedding anyone had attended. Ben and Lisa argued good-naturedly about the best way to repair the ship's secondary cooling system. Valara watched and occasionally asked questions. She was learning to recognize when humans were teasing each other versus actually arguing. She was starting to understand that many human conversations had no specific goal beyond simply connecting with each other. I have a question, Valara said during a quiet moment. When Kate described the flowers catching fire at her sister's wedding, you all made sounds of amusement, but a fire is a dangerous situation. Why did this not cause concern? Because everyone was safe, Kate explained. And because it was so ridiculous. Like, what are the odds that the decorative candles would tip over at the exact moment the bride was walking down the aisle? It was pure chaos. But funny chaos because it was harmless in the end. Chaos that is funny, Valara repeated slowly. This is a concept we do not have. Chaos is to be prevented or corrected. It is never amusing. Maybe that's your problem, Jake said. You've spent so long controlling everything that you forgot how to roll with it when things go sideways. After the meal, Jake suggested something new. Your Majesty, would you let me try something with some of your staff? With your permission, of course. What do you propose? Let me introduce them to a human game. Something with randomness and uncertainty. Something that's just for fun. Valara considered this. Fun is not a priority in our culture. I know, Jake said, but maybe it should be. She agreed to a small experiment. Jake was given permission to gather a group of volunteers from the palace staff. 10 Zetharians showed up, clearly chosen by their supervisors, rather than volunteering freely. They stood in precise formation, waiting for instructions. Jake had brought a deck of cards from the ship. Okay, here's how this works. It's a game called poker. The rules are simple, but there's luck involved. You can't calculate the perfect strategy because you don't know what cards other players have or what cards will come next. The Zetharians looked at each other with what might have been confusion. One of them, a female named Thel, spoke up. What is the purpose of this activity? The purpose is to have fun, Kate said, sitting down at the table they had set up. To enjoy yourself. To see what happens. Quote, but what do we gain from it? Nothing, Ben said cheerfully. That's the point. Not everything needs a practical outcome. They taught the game slowly, explaining each rule, each play. The Zetharians approached it like a logic puzzle at first. Trying to calculate odds and optimal strategies, they played with intense focus, treating each hand like a critical decision. Then Kate did something deliberately suboptimal. She bet everything on a terrible hand, knowing she would lose. When the cards were revealed, she threw her head back and laughed. Well, that was stupid of me. Ben grinned. That was the worst play I've ever seen. I know, Kate said, still laughing. But it was fun to try. One of the Zetharians, a male named Vrex, tilted his head. You knew you would lose. Why did you play that way? Because sometimes it's exciting to take a crazy risk, Kate explained. Even if it doesn't work out. They played several more rounds. Gradually, something began to shift. Thel made a risky play just to see what would happen. When it failed, her mandibles twitched in a way Jake hadn't seen before. Vrex tried bluffing even though he had no chance of success, and when he was caught, he made a sound that might have been amusement. Crix, the guard who usually just watched, asked if he could play. He sat down and immediately made aggressive, unpredictable plays that had no strategic logic. He seemed to enjoy the chaos of it. Jake noticed Valara watching from the doorway. She had been there for a while, observing without announcing her presence. He caught her eye, and she nodded slightly before disappearing. Later that night, she summoned him to her private chamber. A room he had never seen before. It was less formal than the throne room, with windows showing the city lights below. She stood looking out at her capital, her crystalline wings catching the artificial light. What you did today with my staff, she said without turning around. Some of them seemed different afterward. Different how? Less rigid. One of them made an error in their duties later, and instead of distress, they seemed almost amused by it. They corrected the mistake and continued working, but their whole demeanor had changed. That's good, isn't it? I do not know, Valara admitted. She finally turned to face him. I have spent my entire life believing that order and efficiency were the highest values, that emotions were weaknesses we wisely removed. But watching humans, watching how you interact with each other, I see something we lack. You are messy and chaotic, but you are also creative and adaptable, in ways my people are not. You're adapting right now, Jake pointed out. You recognized a problem, and you're trying to fix it. That takes courage. Or foolishness, Valara said, but her tone was different. Softer, maybe. My advisors think I am wasting time on an impossible task. They wonder why I care what a minor species thinks or does. Do you care what I think? She was quiet for a long moment. Yes. And I do not fully understand why. By all logical measures, your opinion should be irrelevant to me. You are a single individual, from a species that has barely begun to explore the galaxy. And yet, I find myself seeking your approval, valuing your perspective. This is not how I was designed to function. Maybe that's exactly the point, Jake said. Maybe feeling things that don't make logical sense is part of what makes life worth living. Valara moved closer to him. Up close, her alien features were less frightening and more interesting. He could see the delicate patterns in her carapace, the way her compound eyes reflected light in complex patterns. I have ruled for 70 cycles, she said. I have made countless decisions that affected billions of lives. I have never doubted my choices because doubt seemed inefficient, but now I wonder about all the things I may have missed while pursuing perfect logic. What have my people lost in our quest for order? I don't know, Jake admitted. But I think you're asking the right questions now. That's a start. The start. She made a sound, something between a sigh and a hum. Continue your experiments with my staff. I want to see what happens when we allow more of this chaos you bring. But be careful. Not everyone in my court approves of your presence here. There are those who see you as a dangerous influence. And, should I be worried? I will not allow harm to come to you, Valara said firmly. You are under my protection. But yes, be careful. Change is threatening to those who benefit from the current order. Jake left her chamber thinking about what she had said. He was trying to teach an alien queen how to laugh, but he was also starting to realize that this was about much more than that. It was about an entire civilization questioning whether they had made the right choices, and somehow, he had ended up right in the middle of it. The warning came from Kate. She cornered Jake in the corridor outside his quarters, her face tight with worry. "We have a problem," she said quietly. "I've been monitoring the palace communications. There's a faction forming against you, against this whole thing." Jake pulled her inside his room where they could talk privately. "Tell me." "High Chancellor Drex. He's been giving speeches to the military commanders and some of the civilian leadership. He's saying that you're a corrupting influence, that humanity is trying to weaken Zetharian culture through this laughter nonsense." "That's ridiculous." "Is it?" Kate asked. "Think about it from their perspective. They've built an entire civilization on the idea that emotion is inefficient. Now you're here, encouraging their people to embrace chaos and unpredictability. Some of them see that as a threat to everything they believe in." Jake sat down heavily. He had been so focused on helping Valara that he hadn't considered the political implications. "How serious is this?" "Serious enough that Drex is demanding an audience with you. He wants to challenge you publicly." The challenge came the next day. Jake was in the garden area of the palace, helping Lisa set up a small area where some of the staff had been learning to play human games. When guards arrived, these weren't the usual escort. They were military, and they weren't friendly. "Captain Jake Morrison," the lead guard said. "High Chancellor Drex demands your presence. Now?" "Now." They marched him through the palace to a formal meeting chamber. Drex was waiting there, along with several other high-ranking Zetharians. The Chancellor was bigger than most of his species, with a carapace that bore deep scars from old battles. He looked at Jake the way a scientist might look at an interesting but potentially dangerous specimen. "Captain Morrison," Drex said. His voice was cold even through the translator. "I have watched your activities in our palace with growing concern. You claim to be teaching our queen, but I see only the introduction of chaos and weakness. With respect, Chancellor, I'm doing exactly what Queen Valara asked me to do. Our queen has made an error in judgment," Drex said bluntly. "Laughter, play, emotional chaos. These are the failings that held us back before the Great Modification. We became powerful by removing these weaknesses. Now you encourage us to embrace them again." "Why?" Jake took a breath, trying to stay calm. "Because efficiency isn't everything. Your people are stagnant. When was the last time you had a major scientific breakthrough? A new form of art? A solution to a problem that nobody expected? We solve problems through logic and planning. And that's great for some things," Jake agreed. "But innovation comes from unexpected places. From taking risks. From trying things that don't make perfect logical sense. You've optimized yourselves into a corner." Drex moved closer. He was intimidating, clearly meant to be. "You have 3 days, human. Prove that this laughter has real value. Show us something concrete. If you cannot, I will petition the Council to expel all humans from Zetharian space. Your species will lose access to our trade routes, our technology, our protection, and it will be your fault." The Chancellor left with his supporters. Jake stood there, feeling the weight of what had just happened. This wasn't just about him anymore. It wasn't even just about Valara. Now the entire human-Zetharian relationship was at stake. Ben found him an hour later, staring out a window at the geometric perfection of the city below. "Kate told me what happened," Ben said. "That's bad." "Yeah. So what are you going to do?" "I have no idea," Jake admitted. "How do you prove that laughter has value? It's not something you can measure or quantify." Lisa joined them, having heard the news. "Maybe that's the wrong approach. You're trying to prove it by Zetharian standards, but the whole point is that some things can't be measured by pure efficiency." "Try explaining that to Drex," Jake muttered. That night, Valara summoned him. She looked different, tired in a way he hadn't seen before. The constant political pressure was wearing on her. even with her engineered emotional controls. "I have heard about Drex's challenge," she said. "I apologize. He oversteps his authority. He represents a lot of your people, though, doesn't he?" Valara nodded slowly. "More than I would like to admit. The old ways are comfortable for them. Change is threatening. I can overrule him. But if too many share his views, it could cause serious problems. Your Majesty, I need to ask you something honestly. Is this worth it? The political cost, I mean. Maybe I should just leave. Say the experiment failed." "No," Valara said firmly. "I will not abandon this because it is difficult. But I also cannot force my people to change if they do not wish to. You have 3 days, as Drex said. I will support whatever you choose to do." Jake spent the next 2 days trying to figure out a solution. He considered demonstrations, presentations, logical arguments. Nothing felt right. On the 3rd morning, he was exhausted and frustrated and completely out of ideas. Valara found him in the garden, sitting on a bench and staring at nothing. "You have not prepared anything," she observed. "No," Jake admitted. "Because I realize something. I can't prove that laughter has value. Not in a way that will satisfy Drex or people like him. Either someone understands it or they don't. Then you have failed." "Maybe," Jake said. He looked up at her towering form. "Or maybe we've been approaching this all wrong. You've been trying so hard to learn to laugh. I've been trying so hard to teach you. But that's not how it works. You can't force joy. You can't schedule spontaneity. You just have to let it happen." Valara sat down beside him, her crystalline wings folding carefully. "Then, what do we do?" "Nothing," Jake said. "We just sit here. Two people who've been working themselves to exhaustion over something that should be simple." They sat in silence for a while. The geometric garden around them was beautiful but lifeless. Not a single weed grew between the perfectly placed stones. Not a single flower bloomed out of season. "This garden is very orderly," Jake finally said. "Yes, it is maintained by specialized staff who ensure perfect symmetry and health for all plants. It's also kind of sad," Jake said. "A real garden is messy. Things grow where they're not supposed to. Flowers bloom at weird times. Birds nest in the bushes and leave droppings everywhere. It's chaotic and imperfect, and full of life." "That sounds inefficient." "It is," Jake agreed. "It's also beautiful." Valara was quiet for a moment. "I have spent my entire reign trying to make everything perfect. Every decision calculated. Every problem anticipated and prevented. And yet, talking to you these past weeks, listening to your crew tell their ridiculous stories about disasters and failures, I have felt something I have no name for." "What does it feel like?" "Like a weight lifting," Valara said slowly. "Like seeing possibilities I had not considered before. Like wanting to do something illogical, just to see what happens." Jake smiled. "That's the start of it. That feeling that maybe perfect isn't always better." "I still have not learned to laugh," Valara said. "I know." They sat together in the too-perfect garden, an alien queen and a human captain, both tired from trying too hard. A maintenance worker, Zetharian, approached to trim some plants, saw the queen, and started to back away. But his tool caught on his harness and he stumbled, nearly falling into a decorative pool. The worker caught himself at the last second, mandibles clicking in clear distress. It was exactly the kind of clumsy accident that could happen to anyone, human or alien, the kind of ridiculous moment that had no real consequences but was somehow fundamentally funny. Jake glanced at Valara. She was watching the worker with intense focus. Her mandibles moved in that unfamiliar pattern. Her posture shifted, and then she made a sound. It wasn't human laughter. It was clicking and musical. A chittering that came from somewhere in her throat. But it was unmistakably the same impulse, the same response to absurdity and unexpected clumsiness. The sound stopped almost immediately. Valara froze, as if surprised by her own reaction. Jake sat very still, afraid that if he said anything, he would break the moment. "I felt something," Valara said quietly. "When he almost fell. It was not concern. It was something else. The situation was so unnecessary, and yet so inevitable. The randomness of it, the complete lack of logic in how his equipment caught at that precise moment. It was absurd. Yeah, Jake said softly. That's exactly what it was. Valara made the sound again, this time deliberately. Her whole body seemed to relax slightly. This is laughter. A version of it, yes. It feels strange, illogical, but also good. Light. She turned to look at him. I understand now. It is not the physical act that matters. It is the recognition of absurdity, the acceptance that not everything makes sense and that this is acceptable. Jake felt something loosen in his chest. Relief, maybe. Or hope. You got it. But will this satisfy Drex? Valara asked. Honestly, probably not. But it's a start. The word spread through the palace by morning. The queen had laughed. Courtiers whispered about it in corridors. Some seemed curious. Others looked disturbed. By noon, Drex had called for the formal demonstration he had demanded. The throne room was packed. Every important Zetharian in the capital seemed to be there. Military commanders stood in precise formation. Civilian leaders occupied their designated positions. The crowd was larger than when Jake had first arrived, and the atmosphere felt tense. Jake's crew stood near the back, looking worried. He caught Kate's eye, and she gave him a small nod of encouragement. They had been through worse situations together, probably. Queen Valara sat on her throne, regal and imposing. She gave no sign of the breakthrough from the previous day. She was every bit the powerful ruler. And Jake wondered if he had imagined the warmth he had seen in her recently. Drex stood in the center of the chamber, commanding attention without effort. We are gathered to see if the human has succeeded in his task. More importantly, to determine if this laughter has any real value to our people. Captain Morrison, present your evidence. Jake walked to the center of the chamber. Every compound eye in the room focused on him. He had spent the previous night trying to prepare something. But in the end, he had decided to just tell the truth. I can't prove that laughter has value, Jake said. His voice echoed in the large space. At least not in the way you want me to. There's no formula for it. No measurement that shows concrete benefits, but I can tell you what I've learned being here. You admit failure then, Drex said. No, Jake replied. I'm saying you're asking the wrong questions. You want proof that joy and spontaneity are useful. But some things don't need to be useful to matter. A murmur went through the crowd. Valara remained still on her throne, watching. Jake continued. Your species engineered away emotions you considered inefficient. You became the most orderly civilization in the galaxy. But you also stopped growing in ways that matter. When was the last time one of your people created something truly new? When was the last time someone solved a problem in a way nobody expected? We solve problems through logic, a military commander called out. And that works great, until you face a problem that logic alone can't solve, Jake said. Humans are messy and chaotic. Yeah. But that chaos makes us adaptable. We try things that don't make sense. We take risks. We fail a lot, but when we succeed, we do things nobody thought were possible. Drex moved forward. This is exactly what I feared. You preach the value of chaos and failure. You would have us abandon the principles that made us strong. I'm not saying abandon logic, Jake argued. I'm saying balance it with something else. Let your people feel joy again. Let them play and create without worrying about efficiency. Give them permission to be imperfect. Words, Drex said dismissively. You offer only words. Where is the evidence? Show us this laughter has improved anything. Before Jake could respond, someone in the crowd spoke up. It was Thel, one of the palace workers who had learned to play cards. High Chancellor, if I may, she said, her voice uncertain but growing stronger. I have experienced what the human teaches. The activities seemed pointless at first. Playing games with random outcomes, sharing stories about failures. But after, I noticed something different in how I approached my work. Drex turned to her. Explain. There was a problem in the environmental systems 2 days ago. an unexpected surge that our protocols did not account for. Normally, I would have followed standard procedures and waited for a senior engineer, but instead, I tried something new. An approach that was not in the manual. It worked. The problem was solved faster than if I had followed the rules. Another Zetharian stepped forward. It was Crix, the guard. I have noticed changes in my unit as well. We have been incorporating some human training methods. They seem chaotic at first, but our response times have improved. More importantly, we adapt better to unexpected situations. One by one, other Zetharians who had interacted with Jake or his crew spoke up. A scientist talked about a research breakthrough that came from thinking differently. An artist described creating something new by ignoring traditional formulas. Their testimonies weren't dramatic, but they were real. Drex listened to all of them, his posture rigid. These are isolated incidents. Anecdotes, not proof of systematic improvement. You're right, Valara said, speaking for the first time. The entire room fell silent. She stood from her throne and descended to the main floor. They are individual experiences, small changes, not the kind of dramatic evidence you demand. Jake felt his heart sink. Was she about to side with Drex? Valara continued. But that is precisely the point. Change does not always come from grand plans and perfect calculations. Sometimes it comes from small moments. From individuals trying something new, from allowing imperfection and seeing what emerges. She moved to stand beside Jake. The gesture was symbolic, a public declaration of support. I summoned Captain Morrison here to teach me to laugh, Valara said. Many of you thought this was foolish. Perhaps it was. But in the process, I learned something more important. I learned that my people have become so focused on maintaining our perfect order that we have stopped evolving. We have stopped growing. We have become stagnant. The crowd stirred. Some looked shocked. Others seemed thoughtful. I am not proposing we abandon our strengths, Valara continued. Logic and order have served us well. But I am proposing we balance them with something we lost long ago. The ability to embrace uncertainty, to find joy in the unexpected, to create without knowing exactly where it will lead. Your Majesty, Drex said carefully, this is a dangerous path. Emotion led our ancestors to conflict and waste. The Great Modification freed us from those weaknesses, and it also took something from us, Valara replied. Something I believe we need to reclaim if we are to continue thriving as a civilization. She turned to face her people, addressing the entire assembly. I am establishing a cultural exchange program with humanity. Any Zetharian who wishes to participate may do so. We will study each other, learn from each other, not to become more human, but to rediscover parts of ourselves we thought were lost. The announcement caused an immediate reaction. Some Zetharians expressed support, others looked horrified. Arguments broke out in different parts of the chamber. Drex raised his voice above the noise. And what of those who do not wish to participate? What of those who believe our current path is correct? No one will be forced to change, Valara said. This is an opportunity, not a mandate. But I will not allow fear of change to hold us back. The galaxy is evolving. We must evolve with it, or be left behind. The assembly continued for hours, with debate and discussion. But the essential decision had been made. Valara had committed to this new path. And as queen, her word was final. Later, Jake found himself back in Valara's private chamber. She looked exhausted but somehow more alive than he had seen her before. That was quite a speech, Jake said. It was necessary, Valara replied. Drex and others like him will continue to oppose this. Change is always difficult. But I believe it is the right path. What happens now? Now we begin the real work, Valara said. The exchange program will take time to establish. We will need human advisors, teachers, people willing to come here and work with my people. I hope you will consider being part of it. Jake thought about his small ship, his simple mission to map trade routes. That all seemed very far away now. Yeah, I think I can do that. Good, Valara said. Then she made that chittering sound again. The one that was her version of laughter. This is still strange to me. The sound. The feeling. But I am beginning to understand why you value it. It gets easier with practice, Jake said with a smile. I hope so. Though I suspect my court will need time to adjust to a queen who laughs. The next day, Jake and his crew prepared to return to the Frontier Dawn. They would come back, but first they needed to report to Earth, to explain what had happened, and arrange for the exchange program. As they walked through the palace one last time, Jake noticed small changes. Guards who acknowledged them with less rigidity. Workers who paused in their tasks to watch them pass with what might have been curiosity instead of suspicion. It wasn't much, but it was a start. At the landing platform, Valara came to see them off. It was unprecedented for the Queen to personally bid farewell to departing visitors. But she did it anyway. Captain Morrison, she said formally, you came here as a prisoner, summoned against your will. You leave as someone who has changed the course of my empire. I am grateful. I just taught you to laugh, Your Majesty. You did the rest. Perhaps, Valara said. But you showed me that perfection is not always the goal. Sometimes, being imperfect but genuine is more valuable. They said their farewells. As the Frontier Dawn lifted off from the planet, Kate sat down next to Jake in the captain's chair. So, she said, we went out to map trade routes and ended up starting a cultural revolution. That's going in the report. Right? Definitely, Jake said. Ben called from engineering. Hey boss, just so you know, this is way above our pay grade. We're going to need a raise. Lisa laughed from the medical bay. We're going to need therapy. Do you know how weird our lives just got? Jake watched Zathura Prime shrink behind them as they entered orbit. The planet looked the same from space, all geometric perfection and ordered cities. But he knew something had changed down there, something small but important. Yeah, he said. It got weird. But I think it got weird in a good way. Kate pulled up star charts on her console. So where to next? Jake thought about it. There was a whole galaxy out there, full of species with their own cultures and problems. Humanity was still new to all of this, still learning how to navigate the complex politics and relationships between civilizations. But maybe that was okay. Maybe being new and imperfect, and willing to try unexpected things, was exactly what the galaxy needed. Let's head home, Jake said. We've got a lot to report. And then we're coming back here. We've got work to do. The Frontier Dawn turned toward Earth, carrying its crew and an impossible story. Behind them, on Zathura Prime, Queen Valara stood in her throne room and made a sound that no Zatharian had made in 200 years. She laughed at the absurdity of it all, at how one small human had challenged everything she thought she knew. And in that moment, change began to spread through an empire that had forgotten how to change at all.